On this episode of the MythWits, we have Dr. Zachary Moore, and we're going to evolve into something new and exciting, and maybe even talk a little bit about God. But until then...
It's the MythWits, a geek pop culture web series, broadcast live for video and audio podcasts. Watch us live at MythWits.com and find us on YouTube and iTunes, bringing you news and reviews about geek pop culture. We have comedy skits, play nerd-tastic games, and provide extensive on-location con coverage. And now, your hosts.
All right, so Dr. Zach is an active leader in the free thought community of Dallas-Fort Worth and has served as the executive director of the Fellowship of Free Thought in Dallas, coordinator of the Dallas-Fort Worth Coalition of Reason, and treasurer for Camp Quest, Texas. Zach received his PhD in molecular biology from the University of Cincinnati and subsequently created the popular Evolution 101 podcast as part of the Apologia podcast. He blogs at doubtingthomases.net and is developing a new podcast called The Gospel of Doubt, which you can find at gospelofdoubt.net. Dr. Zach, welcome to the show again. Because we had technical issues, you know, as the MythWits are known to do, the tech wits.
And as there always is, there is the original drinking game of every time Pete mispronunciates something, you drink.
You gotta.
I appreciate that very much. I'm very glad to be on the show with you guys tonight.
Okay, cool, awesome. Well, we had a lot of issues, so if you're hearing this and we missed anything, I apologize because we won't know if we covered something maybe or not. So we'll try and make sure we cover it all. So Dr. Zach, what can we call you Zach? Call you Dr. Zach?
Zach is fine. Dr. Zach is something. It's really just a stupid affectation. You
Okay.
just call me Zach.
All right. So Zach, again, could you real quick go over the scientific terms that we need to know for our talk tonight, like scientific theory and like you were saying before about gels and such and so forth.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of scientific terms and specific language, and this is the case in any profession. But in science, there are certain terms that have specific meanings. For example, as a molecular biologist, as I was trained to be, when I hear the word gel, I'm thinking like a thick matrix of sugar, jello, basically, that I'm going to run DNA over and separate it by molecular weight. When a photographer hears the word gel, they're thinking, a thin piece of plastic that they're going to put over a light in order to get a specific effect when they're taking pictures of somebody. So, theory is one of these words, and sort of in the popular language, that when we use theory, we're just really using it to say, well, I have a guess about something. I have this theory about how something works. I've come to this guess. In science, usually when we talk about things that are like on that level where it's like a guess or an educated guess, or we have a pretty good idea but we don't really know for sure, we call that a hypothesis. Sort of a fancy, 25-cent word. But a hypothesis is something that is sort of a guess that we might have about something, but it needs further testing. And that's, that gets followed along with sort of the whole experimental process, and you look and you try to look at different variables and try to eliminate your own bias and the bias of your equipment and try to figure out what is actually the deal. Now, after that long process, and that process can take weeks, that process can take months or years or decades. You finally gather enough evidence, and you've looked at it and analyzed it, and you've compared it with other scientists, and they've replicated the same studies in their laboratories, and everybody's come to the same basic agreement. That's when you start talking about a theory in the scientific sense. So you're looking at this huge, usually very huge amount of information, evidence has been collected, papers have been published, and all these things that you're looking at, that you're analyzing, you start to create a general framework of how you look at whatever phenomenon we're talking about. It could be evolution is one theory. Another theory is how we explain how we get sick, right? So there's something called the germ theory of disease.
Yep.
Right? The way that we explain how space-time appears to work, we have sort of the general and the special theories of relativity. And there are many, many, many theories like this in science, and they all represent a large body of research that's led up to that point. It's not as if somebody just said, hey, I've got an idea. What about this crazy thing? And then all of a sudden somebody grabs that and runs with it. To be a theory, to make it to that point, you've got to have lots and lots of data backing you up. And that's not to say that theories can't be overturned. Theories absolutely can be overturned. But in order to challenge an existing theory and replace it with something else, you've got to bring even more data, and you've got to explain not only this new data, but you have to explain all the existing data that we've already been dealing with in a way that makes better sense of the way the world works. One example of this is phlogiston. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of phlogiston. They used to have this.
I haven't, but it sounds dirty.
Yeah. They used to have this idea that there was this sort of essential energy quality that was just sort of in the atmosphere that gave rise to all sorts of things, and they call it phlogiston. And it was actually a working theory. There were people that believed that this was sort of the way the world works, and eventually, they studied it, and physicists got more information. They realized that no, there's actually no such thing as phlogiston.
So
Right.
is that related to, or something completely separate than the whole ether theory before they kind of were?
It's similar to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So like the humors and
the humors, yeah, exactly. That's another and at the time, the I think it's 4 humors, right? The black humor, the red humor, the yellow humor, and the green humor. I mean, that was the height of medical science at the time.
And then there's Darth Blix, which is bad humor. It's a bit of our show that's horrible.
Bitter humor.
But I was going to say one of the one of the things that is very rooted in science and had a very strong and observed. I mean, like it's a modern science idea that was completely overturned. Was static state versus inflationary state of the universe, right? So I mean, that's one that I think it changed in our life, I think it changed in my lifetime. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 44, and I seem to think that changed somewhere in the early 70s. Was it or? That's not my field of expertise, but I believe it had to do with observing the Doppler shift, the red shift of light from stars, which all the stars that we can see are moving away from us, basically, and that indicates that the universe is not, sitting still. Right, and that's something that was, it wasn't like this weird, ether or humors or this weird pre-modern society scientific ideas that they were just kind of stabbing at. This was something that was observed, was in pretty much the accepted scientific consensus, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, this isn't right. It's like and I'm sure there were plenty of scientists who were just like, inflationary, that's crazy, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh well, maybe it's not so crazy. I was always for this inflationary thing. I just but yeah, and a lot of people also talk about how science is this dogma, and these scientists with their dogma, and they don't allow anybody else's opinions, and they are the scientists know everything, and it's just like it's the opposite of that. It is the exact opposite of that.
So, kind of. So there is a dogmatic aspect to science as well. And in fact, in my own field of molecular biology, there's a concept which is routinely referred to as the central dogma of molecular biology, which was originally sort of elucidated by Francis Crick, who was trying to talk about, everyone had known before the discovery of DNA that proteins were the sort of functional parts of biology. When you got down to the macromolecular level, they were what made things happen. What they were trying to figure out was where was the information kept? Where did the information that created these proteins come from? And they suspected for a long time that it was DNA. They just couldn't prove it. And so with the discoveries that James Watson and Francis Crick made, they were able to say, no, this is the structure. It's a double helix. The nucleotides come together, et cetera, et cetera. And from that, they developed this what's called the central dogma, which is that information flows from DNA into RNA, and into protein. It never goes the other way. So the information is basically a one-way street. Now, even that as a central so that, I mean, that's when you say scientists are not dogmatic. That is something that is, supremely dogmatic. But it was arrived.
Whoa! In your face, Pete.
But I'll clarify though. It was arrived at empirically. So I mean, it's not just somebody saying this is the way it has to be. And even that sort of dogmaticness about it can be challenged, and in fact, it has been challenged. So the idea that it's a one-way street from DNA to RNA and protein, that was challenged when retroviruses were discovered, and they carried their information in RNA, and then reverse transcribed it into DNA when it infected a cell. So you had it going in the opposite direction.
Right. And all I meant by that was that there is a dogma in that it's very difficult to get the thinking changed once something is as solid as DNA, but it's not impossible to change.
It's not impossible.
You can provide better evidence, then they give in. They have to. And that's sort of like things that aren't based off of the scientific method don't always have that mechanism. It's sometimes it's kind of like, I say it's this way because it is.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And so in science, it is difficult if there is an established paradigm that has a huge amount of support and weight behind it. It is hard to challenge that, but it's not impossible. And what's interesting is in science, when those types of paradigms are successfully challenged, it takes a while. There's a lot of resistance. But once, if you have the weight of evidence behind you, you can successfully challenge any paradigm, and it's happened. And the people who tend to do that tend to win the Nobel Prize, because when we look back and we say, "Oh, wow, they really did have their shit together, and they really did," they stuck by it, and they showed, and they got the evidence, and they have changed the way we look at this certain thing. Whether it's evolution or whether it's radiation or whatever, they've really changed the game, and we look back on their achievements, and then we give them the Nobel Prize.
And you know what? I think it's important. I think it's extremely important that it is that tough to do, because otherwise you'd have just any crackpot coming around with their ideas. It should be hard to change ideas once they've been established. I mean,
what, like the food babe? Like kind of
like the food babe.
Like, yeah, you would have that functional.
Just any crackpot just coming up.
You would have that functional fucking
any
retard coming around.
Oh. Yeah, exactly.
Mike mentioned her because I have a personal hate is maybe too
Vendetta.
strong. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. She makes my skin crawl. Her and Jenny McCarthy. I want to shake both of them.
Yeah. Well, the food babe isn't. I mean, she wouldn't be so bad if she was just some, daffy lady with these weird ideas. The problem is she's very influential, and
she's got an audience.
And yeah, exactly. And now that we have this, this internet and podcasts and websites and blogs, any dope, with a microphone and a pair of headphones, present company excluded, can spout their ideas and create a fan base and have all these people coming after them and believing everything they say without questioning them.
Yeah. And
that's kind of scary too. I mean, it's great to have this accessibility and everything like that, but on the other hand, we need to also have a concomitant increase in our critical thinking faculties in order to really take in all this new information that's being pushed at us.
Yeah, here's the food babe.
I got it. I know the damn words, all right?
Groovy.
She says Klaatu. So, all right. So moving quite along.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I think people have a hard time with is you've got this concept, this evolution concept, which is, I mean, it's complicated. It's not just this. It's not something very simple. You can tell somebody about in 10 minutes.
So don't ask him to explain it in 10 minutes.
No, I'm not. You would go and listen to his podcast, and I would explain it to you. But other than that, I'm
in
thinking
10 hours. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm thinking that some of the books that I've read that I really, really like that are, I think you listen to your podcast first, and then you go read these, and you're good. But some of my favorite ones are, I like this book called Survival of the Sickest by Sharon Molem. Take a drink. And Jonathan Prince was really good, because one of the things that it kind of helped me with is like the concept of, if it's survival of the fittest, as everybody likes to say, and I know that term is misunderstood quite a bit, then how do diseases like diabetes and cancers and all these things, and we're going to be talking about cancer soon, but all these things, how do they stay within our our species, or in all species, if you would think that they would have evolved out of those things, and this book goes through and explains it very well, exactly
because of all the fast food and all the junk that's in food
and airplanes with the compression.
And airplanes, right.
Or to quote Jamie Oliver, children's food needs to be healthy.
But I thought that was a good book, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it or read it.
No, I haven't actually.
That's really good. It explains a lot of how that happens and why it is the way it is. And then there was
the brain on Pete.
There was another book by Sean B. Carroll called Making of the Fittest, which was phenomenal. I mean,
yeah, that's a good one.
If you've ever heard the term irreducible complexity, he nails that bitch right to the floor and explains exactly why that's not even a thing.
Yeah.
And it couldn't be clearer, or at least I don't know if you got if you're not the food babe. And then the last one that I haven't read this one, but I've heard it's really good, and you've probably seen this one. It's called and I think it's good for kids. It's called Evolution: How We and All Living Things Came to Be by Daniel Loxton.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna get that for my daughter when she gets just a tiny bit older. But yeah, so those are some other books that I think people can get into. Are there any books that you suggest that you really like that are good for the layman, the non-scientist, or the non-biologist?
Yeah, well, it's funny. So when I interact with people that object to evolution, it's almost always from a religious perspective that they do so. Not necessarily Christian. Many Muslims also object. Jews, not so much, actually. But Christians and Muslims are kind of arm in arm in their objection to evolution. Not all of them, of course, but that's where I tend to find it. And so one of the things I found that's helpful, especially for Christians I interact with, is a couple of books. One, which is just really great, is called Finding Darwin's God, which is by Kenneth Miller. He's a biology professor at Brown and writes one of the foremost textbooks, biology textbooks. And his book is so he's a Catholic, actually, so he's a religious fellow, and his book does a great job of outlining like all the reasons why we came to this theory. You know, all the early discoveries and how the evidence piled up and how people began to think about it. And he really presents a pretty solid case. And at the end of it, he allows himself this a bit of room for God. Mm-hmm. And why shouldn't you? I mean, I used to be a believer. I was raised a Christian, and I had a brief moment when I sort of flirted with creationism. I was probably about 10 years old. And I'd gone to a fairly serious Sunday school class. We were talking about hell and the devil and all of his trickery. And and after church, we were walking back to the parking lot, myself, my brother, and my parents. And I turned to my father and I said, I bet all those fossils, those dinosaur fossils, those are just one of the devil's tricks, aren't they? I was fascinated with dinosaurs at the time. And my dad just gave me this look like, no.
Yay, Dad!
No. And my dad was a very serious believer as well, and he just was like, no, don't even start that. Right. And so that ended my flirtation with creationism.
Sweet, good dad. Yeah, I was just real quick. I was 24 when I did just the tiniest flirtation with creationism. Now, I've been up until about I don't know, about 35. I was on again, off again, kind of believer, but kind of not, but kind of floating around, and I was sort of in limbo. I didn't really know what I believed. I just, it's like I know I believed that evolution was real because I saw all the evidence, and I was like, yep, this is good. And anyway, so I was just soul searching basically. So I was talking to this one guy at this engineering office that I worked at, and he started talking about creationism. Now, this is back in '94, so sort of the whole creationism movement was just starting to, I think, get its feet.
Get some steam, yeah.
Right. And I had no idea what he was talking about. He just kind of came out of nowhere with this, and he was presenting it very scientifically. He's showing me all these measurements for the arc and how it could work and all this stuff, and I'm like looking at it, and I was just kind of like, so I looked into, I'm like, I'll check it out. Why not? I have an open mind, So I'm looking at it. It took me a couple of weeks of talking to him, and I wasn't totally buying it, right? But I was like, I'll keep listening. And finally one day I just kind of went, no, it's all bullshit. I was like, this doesn't work for me. Like no. And so I did, and again, I didn't even know it was. I don't even think it was called. I don't even think it had a name yet. This movement that they were developing.
It was at that point. It was transitioning from creation science into intelligent design.
Yes.
Okay. So
sneaky.
So that was
using sneaky words like intelligence.
Right. So it was shortly after that I just kind of was just like, all right, that's it. I'm pretty much straight up agnostic. And then I went into I don't know. I was kind of just floating around with that, and I kept reading all these books. And it was weird. I don't know what's so weird about this this flirtation that we have, or that some people have. And I don't know if you had this or not, but I did. I certainly did. Was this flirtation with the Christian, the whole Christian structure and the mythology of it, and I don't mean to dismiss on anybody who's watching our show. Our show is not, it does not have a political or religious stance. This is my personal thing, and I'm not trying to belittle Christianity by calling it mythology. To me, it seems like a mythology, so just bear with me.
Well, even C.S. Lewis said it was mythology, but he said it was the myth that came true.
Oh, okay, I like that. So
good one.
As I was doing all this, I read The God Delusion, and I realized that I really wasn't an agnostic. It was more fair to say that I was an atheist than it was to say I was an agnostic. Although I'm still not concrete. I'm not like, oh, there's no way God could exist, because to be scientifically minded, you can't say that it's impossible. But I will say that it is, in my opinion, it's highly exceptionally improbable, and I don't think that if it does, if God does exist, it doesn't exist in any format than we've been told so far, because none of that stuff works for me.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but atheism is a response to a claim. I mean, basically.
Yeah. You could be both. Yeah, I mean, so when you're kind of talking, you're sort of giving two bits of information about yourself when you talk about agnosticism versus atheism. Agnosticism, contrary to what Stephen Colbert suggests, is not a weak-willed atheist.
I love when he said that.
So when you say that you're agnostic, you mean, in the classic sense, you could mean that you don't think that it's possible to know one way or the other. There could be a God, but it's not possible to get knowledge of him. Versus whether or not you actually believe in a God. That's the atheism answer. So you could be a Gnostic atheist. You could say, oh, I'm absolutely certain that we can know there is no God. You could be agnostic atheist. I don't know that we can know, but I don't believe that there is one. Right. You could also be an agnostic theist, where you could say, well, I don't really know if we can know there's a God, but I'm going to believe in one anyway. Or you could be a Gnostic theist, which is what most theists are. They believe that we can know, and they believe that there is one.
Right. And it's funny because I get accused of being just yesterday. Today? Was it today? Or was it yesterday? I don't know. Whatever. On Facebook. And this happens over and over again, and I keep having to clear it up with people. Somebody called me a pop atheist, and I had to go look that up because I'm like, what the fuck is a pop atheist, right? And I was like, and they're kind of related to the whole new atheist pop. And I was like, I was reading the description. I'm like, that's not me at all. I mean, like, because it sounded very like anti-theist, and totally not anti-theist.
It's a weird thing, you know. I sort of take on the sort of the new atheist or pop atheist or whatever you want to call it. But the way I look at it is that the new atheism, it definitely started as a post 9/11 social phenomenon, right? So the one thing that happened to me, and I'm sure most of other people in my generation, is when 9/11 happened, we looked at that and we said, well, you can say whatever you like about these guys that did this, but you can't say that they didn't have faith, and they didn't have religious faith. And so it really, I was a believer still at the time, but it really caused me to look really hard at, do I really think that religious faith is necessarily a good thing? Certainly not. So why then? How did I come to my faith, and is my faith necessarily a good thing? And it started sort of that reevaluation. On September 12th, 2001, Sam Harris wrote down the proposal for his book, The End of Faith, right, which was eventually published and became a surprise bestseller because it sort of tapped into a lot of things that a lot of people have been thinking, but hadn't really been vocalizing or writing about yet. And when his book became a bestseller, then Richard Dawkins' literary agent, contacted him and said, all right, Richard, now is the time for you to write that book about atheism that you've been so desperate to write. The same thing happened for Christopher Hitchens. And so within short order, you had books from both these guys who were very anti-theist, saying really mean and hurtful things about religion, and especially Christianity, although Hitchens was sort of an equal opportunity offender.
Yeah.
But it surprised me because I was sort of going through this process of apostasy myself during that that period roughly. But it shocked me because I live in a fairly sort of white bread, red Republican Texas area, and I walk in Barnes & Noble and I see copies of God Is Not Great featured right in the front as people are walking in on the feature shelf in Barnes & Noble where they put everything that's brand new and they want people to buy. And I see rows and rows and rows of God Is Not Great, and I just, what is happening? What is, who are buying these books? I know I bought the book, but who else is buying these books? I don't know any other atheists. And so one of these things that prompted people to do is people like myself started wondering who else is reading these books. And so we went online and we tried to find each other. And one of the other things that happened after 9/11 actually was that a group of programmers got together in Manhattan and they created a website that eventually became Meetup.com. And Meetup.com has provided, because they were like, this is terrible. We need to find a way to connect people. They're looking for each other. We need to connect people in real life. And so they founded a website which eventually became Meetup. And the atheist community, once they found each other online, they wanted to meet up in real life. And so there's tons of atheist organizations that organize through Meetup, and that's what I started doing too.
Well, that's we did that. Mike and I went to now it wasn't an atheist group, it was a skeptics group, which is not the same thing, but they're related. They're cousins.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are theistic skeptics. They're rare, but they do
Yeah.
exist.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that the reason I haven't been finding reasonable people to have good conversations with is because I've been on Tinder instead of Meetup?
That might be part of it.
That could be part of your problem there, Mike.
Mental note. Meet up. Okay.
So anyway, I view that whole thing as the sort of the new atheist movement. It's more than just Dawkins and Hitchens and whatnot. Those guys sort of were part of it when it was starting, but it became a sociological phenomenon, and I, like it or not, I'm part of that. And so I am one of these, nasty, dirty, whatever, new atheists that crop out to, and I also am. I think I consider myself to be sort of a non-stereotypical. I'm not really an anti-theist. Like I said, I was raised a believer, and I never had any bad experiences in the church. Priests never touched me the wrong way. I never, fell out of favor with the pastor or anything like that. I love going to church. I still love going to church, even as I was starting to disbelieve. And in fact, I still go to church a lot because I have a problem and I don't know how to solve it. I just know. Seriously, I just really enjoy being around Christians. It's I don't know.
I like the fellowship part of it. My kids, I don't live with them anymore, but my kids, they all go to Christian schools and things.
Yeah.
And I was involved with I was a leader in the Boy Scout troop and stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, I've always loved just the fellowship aspect of it. And I think that there's not enough of that even within the atheists or agnostic communities. I think the only thing that is even close to some of these, you know, skeptical and other type meetups.
Well, that's beginning to change. So there are more and more of these, you know, quote unquote atheist churches that are being formed all the time. So one of the ones that that Pete rattled off that I was affiliated with, the Fellowship of Free Thought in Dallas, that was a early sort of atheist congregation where it really does create a community that does sort of take the place of church, and it's been wonderful. It's you know, it's a great group of people, and I've been really honored to be a part of that, and I feel really grateful to have all those people in my life. I've got a son; he's 3 years old. When we have a birthday party, every single person that we invite is from the FOF because they're all his friends. You know, when you ask him who do you want to come to your party, he rattles off all these other kids from the Free Thought group that he plays with all the time. And so it's just easy. When we moved from one part of Dallas to another. I put out a call on Facebook to see if anybody around would be able to help, and like 20 people from the Free Thought group showed up, and they all moved me. You know, and I'm like, this is really cool. Now this is not something that's unique. This happens in churches all the time. My point is, everything that churches have done historically, from a sociological perspective, from a psychological perspective, you know, all that stuff we can do as well, and we are doing, and so that is happening.
And you know what's interesting? Hearing you say that, it also sort of made me think of it. My kid's school. There is a small group, and it actually is growing as we find, you know, each other. A small group of fathers who are atheists.
Yeah.
And it's like you find out it, and it is like it is probably, it is very analogous to probably being homosexual and finding out, oh my God, you're gay too, you know, and just sharing that. No, I'm serious, like
Mike
sharing
and I
that.
had that moment, you know.
It was also analogous. So when I was a graduate student coming up in the labs, it was kind of analogous to finding other Christians in the lab, because it was not a common thing to find people who are out, I guess, as Christians in the laboratory setting. And so when we'd find each other, like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. What church do you go to? Yeah.
And you know, like I said, interestingly, I was involved with the Boy Scouts. The Boy Scouts of America do not take kindly to atheists. You know, so I
not at the moment.
No.
And look, I just want to make sure that any of our listeners, if you're Christian or Muslim or whatever your particular brand of belief or non-belief is, you know, I know a lot of. Okay, so I'm really good friends with. I just want to go in a certain direction here. I'm very good friends with a woman I work with who's Muslim, and she is awesome. And we get along great, you know. And we even, you know, it's funny because I ask her about her religion a lot, because I don't get very many opportunities to talk about Muslim or learn about Muslim religion. And she's Indian. She's Muslim, but she's Indian. So it's a little different. I know several Indian people. It's the first time I ever met one that was actually Muslim. I know there's tons of them, but it was just, I was kind of like, cool. Finally, I finally met one of the other Indian people. I mean, I know there's tons of them. Oh, God, I'm putting my foot in my mouth. Anyway, so I don't mean to, but I am. But anyway, so her and I talk about the Islamic religion, and it's funny because there's been several times where I've asked her questions about something she knows nothing about. She's like, I didn't even know that was a thing. And I'm like, how do you not know this? This is your thing. Like, I asked her, I said, you know, I heard somewhere, I was reading somewhere that the Muslims observe Jesus, and I was just wondering at what, you know, what level is that? I mean, like, how do you feel about that? And like, what did you learn? And she's like, what, really? They do? I was like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
Really? And so she's just, she is, but she's not really that involved. And it seems like there are a lot of Christian people do fall into that as well. And it's funny because it goes to that, I don't know who quoted this, but it's like, nobody knows religion like an atheist. Like, nobody knows religion better than an atheist. And it seems like we always seem to be more educated than a lot of atheist people.
Well, and I think where that comes from, and I should just say, so again, I used to be Christian, and the way I look at it is, I sort of look back on my, I guess, past life, for lack of a better term, and I look back at myself. I'm like, I don't think I was an idiot. Like, I don't think I was stupid. I was the same person now. I was just maybe looking at things a little bit differently. But I think one of the things that I've discovered about sort of the atheist community is how many of us are former Christians and former believers, but especially former Christians, and most of us have gone through that process of becoming apostate Christians by studying the religion very much in depth. And it's when we do that some of us find things that we object to, or that cause us to lose our belief. And so it's simply a matter of the biography, I guess, the biographical context of most atheists in America at the moment are former Christians who have left the faith after studying. And that's not to say that other Christians don't study. I know a lot. I'm good friends with lots of Christians. Some of my best friends are Christian. Yeah. And they're brilliant people, absolutely brilliant people.
Yep.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
Yeah, not that there's anything wrong with that. but yeah, it is interesting that in general there is a for most mainstream Christians, I guess, the quote unquote pew potatoes, they really don't know much about what they're supposed to believe in. So there's a fellow, his name is George Barna. He's a sociologist, and he's a Christian, an evangelical Christian, and he only studies Christians. And he runs a website called barna.org, and there's tons of fascinating information there because he just does survey after survey after survey of Christians and what they're like and what they do and what they believe. And several years ago, he ran a survey where he asked self-identified Christians to agree or disagree with basically 11 different basic doctrinal statements. Things like hell is a real place. Statements like Jesus was the Son of God. Things like that. And so the people responding to the survey would say either yes or no. And a huge number of people, and these all 11 statements should be like absolute basic minimum Christianity, but a huge number of people did not say yes to all those statements. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'll let you guys guess, see if you can figure out. Do you think the number of people who said yes to all 11, so these are the true minimally biblical Christians, do you think that's more or less than half?
I'm going to abstain because I already saw part of this.
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to abstain, so you guys go ahead.
Less than half.
You say it was less than half?
Who answered yes to all of it, right?
Who answered yes to all of them? That should be the,
Yeah, less than half.
Yeah,
less than half?
I'm saying less than half as well.
Okay, more or less than 25%.
I should have said, I would say more like a quarter.
You'd say a quarter?
Yeah, I would have said that, Yep.
Okay.
And I did not see the study. I didn't cheat like Pete.
Well, he's abstaining. That's fair. So the actual answer is 9%.
Whoa!
9%. 9%. 1 out of 11 Christians says yes to all of the above, which are the things that they're supposed to say yes to.
Right.
So there's a wide diversity among all the other answers. So the basic takeaway is there's a huge smorgasbord of Christians out there, and they're not all the same, and they don't all have the same beliefs, even though their leaders might, sort of position themselves as if they're speaking with one voice. They really are not. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what fascinates me also about Christians and the modern American church is how diverse and interesting and frankly just kind of weird it is. It is not what you would expect at all. There's huge variations. There's a church just down the street from me that is very sober, very somber. They've got a pipe organ. It really takes me back. I love it. There's another church on the same street that you go in there and they've got a hot tub in the lobby, which is where they do their baptisms. Yes, they have a hot tub. They have a disco ball in the worship room, and they have smoke machines.
Nice.
So
I'm gonna get in the hot tub.
These churches are within a mile of each other, and the people that go to these churches are probably neighbors, and I find that fascinating. That's cool. And that's part of the reason, I guess, why I like going to these different churches and finding out, what they do and what they teach and stuff like that.
Well, I have quite a few friends that are theists, that are devout theists, and we get along just fine. The ones who know me.
Yeah.
You know, this guy I used to work with, Richard, he and I used to have these really good long talks, and whenever we're on Facebook and somebody like jumps on me with both feet saying, "Oh, you are such a mean atheist," rah, 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 rah. If Richard sees it, he'll jump on and go, "You got them all wrong. You are completely wrong." and this guy is like he's very devout. He's like, he and I have talked long hours, and you completely don't get what he's saying.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I'm like that guy at work. It's really funny. New people who were recently hired at work, and someone's like, "Oh, that's Mike. He's the atheist," and I'm like, "That's what you see me as?"
Right? Really?
I was like, "Yeah." No, and I stopped having a lot of debates. I've calmed down. As a matter of fact, no one really likes to talk to me anymore because I do really take more of a. I mean, about that. They don't like to. We don't have these.
They like ostracize you. Like,
I'm not very popular.
Don't talk to Mike. He's dirty.
No, I mean, people kind of like. I'll say, what? I mean, what do you have any questions? I don't understand. You what do you think that means? And they're like, never mind, because they know, like, I've pretty much very. I guess I've just learned enough of the right things, the right ways to say things, studied up on things to know. I point people in different directions, and they come back at me, and they're just like, "Man, never mind."
All right, so hey, let's roll this around a little bit. So
Sure.
We've been kind of jumping all over the place, and I want to make sure I cover the things that you want to talk about.
Well,
so we have you have this you're into outreach between religious and atheist communities, and there is this foundation beyond belief, which is really interesting. I like this. This is really cool. I did some digging through the website, and I was like, wow, this is really, really cool.
It is. So the Foundation Beyond Belief was started in 2010 by a guy named Dale McGowan, and Dale is there's literally nothing that I can say that's good enough to really demonstrate how awesome Dale is. He is the humanist heart that's beating at the center of the secular community. He's really just a fantastic, sweet guy, and he really cares about doing the right thing and presenting us in a good and positive way. He's written several books. He wrote a book about parenting if you're an atheist, right? So they're really, at the time, he had several kids. They're getting older now and starting to leave the nest, but at the time he had these young kids, and he was like, I'd love to have some books to sort of give me some advice of how to raise these kids. But most of the books he could find were coming from a religious perspective, and he's like, there's no good books about raising kids if you're an atheist. So he wrote one called Parenting Beyond Belief, and a sequel called Raising Freethinkers. He's also written the book Atheism for Dummies. He was asked to write that by the For Dummies people. He's also written basically like a textbook of the history of atheism and free thought. It's fantastic. So he's a really great guy.
Real quick, so Atheist for Dummies. So do you think that like these really evangelical people, hold the book up and joke and go, yeah, all of them?
All of them, right? Yeah, exactly. So anyway, he had this great idea also of, it's like, boy, we've got, this was sort of in the height of the new atheist phenomenon. He's like, we've got all these atheists and they're coming together, and there'd be horrible things that happen in the world. There'd be a tornado or a tsunami or something, and and everybody wants to donate, but nobody knows where to donate to because they don't want to send their money to a explicitly religious group that's just going to handle Bibles, right? He's like, wouldn't it be great if there was an explicitly secular charity that tried to find really good ways to direct people's donations, and he couldn't find one, so he's like, well, I guess I got to make one. So he started the Foundation Beyond Belief, and that's what it does. It basically, if you sign up as a member, you contribute a certain amount of money. The foundation takes that money and passes it 100% to a different slate of really wonderful secular charities every quarter. And one of the things that he instituted early on, and this was something that a lot of people cared about, including myself, is he said, we don't want to be supporting the religious charities that do just hand out Bibles, but there are good religiously motivated charities that do good work and don't hand out Bibles. They hand out food, they hand out shelter.
Right.
They're motivated by their religious beliefs, but they're not just out there proselytizing.
Right.
And we want to recognize those groups too. And so every quarter there's a separate religious charity that's chosen, and you don't have to donate to it. It's just an option. But for those people who do want to build bridges between religious groups and secular groups, that's there. And he's told me that he'll cut a check for several $1,000s that's raised to this charity, and he'll send it to them, and they'll be like, "What? It's coming from where? Are you kidding me?" And it really it opens doors, and maybe it might change their perspective about atheists maybe a little bit. I don't know, but the most important thing is it does good because they're doing good.
That reminds me of a George Robb story. You familiar with George Robb?
I am. I've met him.
Okay. Yeah, so one of my favorite stories he told was when he went and changed this lady's tire, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, thank you. What can I do? And how can I thank you?" He said, "Just whoever asks you, you tell them that an atheist changed your tire."
Yeah. That's the only payment he wanted. He just because he's like, look, we're good people. We're this paintbrush that we're painted with is sometimes pretty horrible and quite wrong.
Yeah. It's harsh.
There was a Baptist church in Dallas-Fort Worth nearby where I live, where we did it was just a sit down and chat. It was organized between members of our group and the church pastor. And it was on, I think it was just Tuesday night. We showed up. They brought, cookies and punch, basically, and they set out tables and chairs, and they invited as many people from the church, who wanted to meet some atheists, and we invited as many atheists as we could from our group to meet the church people. And we literally just broke into groups and split up and sat down at chairs and talked for an hour with people from this Baptist church, this little bitty Baptist church. And we had wonderful conversations, and the most striking thing of that evening, there was a little old lady. We moved around a little bit, but there was this little old lady at the table I ended up at, and the pastor asked at the end of the evening, he said, is there anything that you learned that you think is significant that you'd like to share? And this little old lady from the church raised her hand, and she said, "I learned that I don't have to be afraid of atheists." And she was awesome. Completely serious, and right. And it was really fantastic that in her mind she was like, these are real people, and I can talk with them, and it doesn't have to bother me. I don't have to be afraid of this experience. And right. We know that there are Christians out there that are afraid. I went to a apologetics conference in Dallas a couple years ago at a mega church, a massive mega church. And at the beginning of the conference, the head pastor got up and said, I know a lot of you have been clamoring for something like this. They had all the top Christian apologists there. They had Ravi Zacharias, they had William Lane Craig, and Frank Turek, and Greg Kokel, and all these guys. And he said, I know you guys have been clamoring for something like this because several of you, have repeatedly told me that you're worried that you're going to be standing in line, basically at Starbucks, waiting for your coffee, and you're going to strike up a conversation with the person next to you and realize they're an atheist, and you're not going to know what to say. And so the conference was designed to help them, know what to say, basically. And I just thought that was so fascinating. Like, really, there are people that are so much so that they're vocalizing this to the head pastor, that they're worried about having a conversation with an atheist. I'm like, come on. But I don't mean to be dismissive, because that is true. I mean, apparently that there are Christians out there that are really worried about that.
Yep. All right, so just real quick, the Foundation Beyond Belief, they have 4 programs: a Humanist Giving, the Beyond Belief Network, the Humanist Disaster Recovery, and Humanist Service Corps. And,
right.
I'm assuming that's the 4 different things that they do.
Yes, and
goal.
those
Arms of the church, if you will.
Yes.
Those last two are just launching this year, in fact. So the first two have been around for a little while. It started with the Humanist Giving Program, and that's what I was explaining before, where you donate money to the foundation, it passes along to worthy charities. One of the things that they realized early on was that there are a lot of people who have more time to give than money, and so they started to encourage groups all over the country to sort of work together and coordinate different service projects so that they could encourage their members to be generous with their time, not just their money, which is something that the Christian churches definitely do better than us, by an order of magnitude at least. So the Beyond Belief Network and the Humanist Giving, those were sort of the first two core aspects of the foundation. When the year before last, when the bad tornadoes hit Oklahoma City, and there was a lady who had her house flattened. She was a little town called Moore that was hit really terribly, and Wolf Blitzer from CNN was interviewing her in front of where her house used to be, and he said, "Boy, aren't you thankful to God that you weren't here, when this tornado came through?" And she turns to him on live CNN and says, "Well, Wolf, actually, I'm an atheist."
I remember.
And it was kind of a huge moment because
awesome.
It was really timely and fortunate that she was able to drop that when she did. But since then,
my point would have been, no, actually, if I was going to thank God, I'd be thanking God for not blowing my house up.
Right. Well, her name is Rebecca Witzman, and she's actually, since that time, she's joined the Foundation on Belief. And as you can imagine, crisis response is one thing that she cares very deeply about now. And she is heading up the new Humanist Crisis Response, which will put humanists on the ground whenever something like that happens from here on out. Not to say that they haven't already been on the ground, but now they'll all be on the ground wearing matching T-shirts, basically, so that when Wolf Blitzer walks by or when some other person from the media walks by, it'll be very obvious even to them. The other thing that's starting is the Humanist Service Corps, and I'm super excited about this as well. So this is basically a mission trip, a mission field for humanists, and not preaching humanism either, but doing good work. It was started by a guy named Connor Robinson. He's a really fantastic individual. Is the perfect person to be in this role. He really wanted to start this up. This is his baby. He worked with Dale to sort of put this whole thing together. He got a group of people to go on a pilot project, which was called the Pathfinders Mission. And they literally went around the world for a year. They started in California and just kept on going west. And they would spend like a month or 2 months at a time in different places in the world that needed help. And they just sort of immersed themselves in the culture and got to know what was going on and tried to figure out how they could best help and where they could fit in and what they could learn about how to do good missions work from a humanist perspective. And so they went around the globe for an entire year and then came back to the United States. And Connor Robinson, who led that up, is now launching a Humanist Service Corps, which will be a permanent mission. So it's not going to travel the world, but he selected one of the spots that they served at in northern Ghana has a problem with superstitious belief, particularly belief in witchcraft. And one of the things that happens is very terrible. Because of this belief in witchcraft, women especially who are marginalized or dispossessed for whatever reason are accused inevitably of being witches and are thrown out of their communities to fend for themselves, basically. And what the government has done is created these camps where these women at least have a little bit of shelter, but it's not even as good as a concentration camp. I mean, it's a terrible existence. And there's a fellow whose name is Leo Egwe, who's actually a Nigerian humanist, and he's basically made it his life's work to bring attention to this problem in northern Ghana, and so he brought the Pathfinders there last year, and they worked there, and they fell in love with that mission, and so they're going to be going back and creating a permanent humanist base that's going to be addressing the physical, and very important physical needs of these women, who barely even have, they don't even have a pot to piss in. They don't have running water in most cases. They literally just have like 4 4 walls and maybe a tin slat for a roof. So addressing their physical needs, and then in the long term addressing the supernatural, the superstitious beliefs that are held there in the community, because those have to go away. In order for this problem to go away, those superstitious beliefs have to change, and that's something that humanists are very well equipped for. So my goal is, hopefully, I don't know whether he'd be up for this. My son is 3 years old now, but when he's old enough to go on a trip like that, I would love for him to go. I wish I could have gone. I wish I was young enough and free enough to do something like that. But I would be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be cool. I would love to do something like that, but life is not where. Life is not there.
Sort of passed me by.
Pete, can we ask Zach to talk a little bit about Camp Quest? Camp Quest.
Yeah, so
Camp Quest.
That is on my list, and yeah, let's do that. Camp Quest.
Because I know we're running out of time, so.
Right. Yeah. So let's get through the rest of this pretty quick, and we still haven't talked about cancer. So let's go Camp Quest real quick, and then I want to talk about cancer.
Okay. Well, let me just preempt that. Cancer is bad. Don't get it.
Avoid it at all costs.
Avoid it at all costs. That's a little bit too flippant. Now, cancer sucks.
I you know what? I'm sorry. I know a lot of people who've been afflicted with it, and it is horrible, and I am fucking terrified of it.
It is, but the good news is that it has not for all cancers.
Camp Quest.
Okay, so Camp Quest is also something awesome that I'm involved with. So Camp Quest started in Ohio, actually really close to where I grew up, strangely enough. As I've mentioned many times on the show tonight, I was a believer, so I had no idea that something like this existed, but it was literally down the street from me. It was only after I moved to Texas that I got to know about it. But it's a summer camp, right? So it's a summer camp. It's explicitly secular. That doesn't mean that it's like preaching atheism or trying to make kids more atheists than they already are, or convert Christian kids into atheism. It's just it's a camp for the kids who come from atheist or secular families. Although I will point out that we've had a few people, a few religious people in Texas send their kids to Camp Quest, Camp Quest, Texas. Yeah, and it's funny because. We used to have a spot on our registration form that asked about the parents' beliefs, because we were trying to be sensitive to all the diversity and whatnot, and we had a couple of registrations come through that said Christian, and I saw those and I'm like, well, this can't be right. They must think that we're something else or whatnot, and so I called the parents, and in both cases it was intentional. So in one case there was a mother who said, well. Yes, I put down Christian because we are Christian. I and my husband were both Christian. But my daughter is 11 years old, and she has just recently decided that she's no longer a Christian, and she's not sure exactly what she is, but she's leaning in atheist direction, and we're trying our best to be supportive. And so we found Camp Quest, Texas, and we're sending her there.
Why couldn't I have parents like that?
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That is so cool. I love those parents.
I'll raise you one. So the next parent I called was the same deal. They put down Christian. I said, I just want to let you know that this is not a religious camp at all. It's not explicitly atheist, but most of the people there will be atheists. Most of the counselors will be atheists. And the person said, oh, yeah, we know. We looked you up. We read all your materials. We're religious. Our kids are religious, but we like to expose them to different points of view. So we're going to send them to Camp Quest, Texas.
I love those parents.
Nice.
Can we go to Camp Quest? I want to go to Camp Quest.
All right,
so there are those parents out there.
So on the flip side, so we already know what I am. So my wife is Jewish, but she likes to do the Jewish.
Yeah,
she's not like a practicing. She's Jewish, but she's not practicing. More of like a social thing. And I don't really know what she believes, because every time we've talked about it, she doesn't like talking about it with me because I start asking all these questions that she doesn't like to answer. So we just have agreed, and I'm fine with that. We don't talk about it. She believes whatever it is she believes, and I don't care. But she likes to educate our daughter in all the Jewish traditions and stuff. So I do Hanukkah every year, and I do.
I do too, actually.
I do Yom Kippur, and then we do Christmas and Easter because my family's Christian, and my family's all upset because they're like, "You're gonna teach your daughter to be an atheist," and I'm like, "No, I'm not." I was like, "You can't teach somebody to be
right."
No, you can't.
Hey, I mean, come on. I think I have the muddiest of them all, though.
Well, hold on, let me finish real quick.
Okay,
I'm going somewhere with this. So. This past summer, they wanted to send her to. My wife wanted to send her to this Christian summer camp that was a couple weeks long. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. And she was like, it'll be fine. She's like, she'll go, and she wants to go, and her friends are going, and they swim all, the whole time they're there, they swim like every day and stuff. And I'm like, all right. So everything was cool and all. And then she starts coming home, and she starts singing all these Jesus songs, right? Now, my daughter's like 5 at the time. So she starts singing songs about how much she loves Jesus and everything. And she's telling me about how Jesus makes the grass grow and all this stuff. And I'm like starting to get agitated. I was really starting to get agitated. I was actually getting fucking angry, right? And my wife is laughing at me because she thinks it's funny. She's like, I love it when she sings Jesus songs and you get all mad. But I don't take it out on my daughter, and I don't mess with my daughter's head at all. I'm just like, I had to think about it. I was like, why am I angry? I mean, like, why is this making me angry? What do I care, right? Because to make myself feel better, right, I would say, so what do you think Santa Claus is going to bring you this year? She's like, oh, I don't know. I'd like, this or that or something. And I'm like, and I'll say to her something like, Santa's Jesus' brother. And she goes, oh, really? And I'm like, and then I feel good because I'm like, yeah, she believes in all that crap too, right? I'm sorry. I shouldn't say crap. Anyway.
Stuff.
I'm trying not to be offensive, but I sometimes I can't help it. But anyway, so we go through all that, and I'm just like, why am I so angry about this whole situation? I shouldn't be, because honestly, I don't care what she is. Whatever she grows up to be is whatever she is, right? Mm-hmm. And I realized it was because they were telling her stuff that she wasn't asking. They were giving her answers that she wasn't asking for, and that's what made me mad.
So Camp Quest is kind of the opposite. So the one thing that really makes us, I think, distinct. So we do all the, archery and canoeing and hiking and swimming and all that fun stuff. But the one thing that's really cool, we do something called Socrates Cafe, and this happens every night after dinner. So the kids have an option after dinner. They can either go to Socrates Cafe or they can go play games. So it's totally voluntary. About half to 2/3 of the kids come to Socrates Cafe anyway. And what it is we get the biggest room that we have available at camp, and we just put the chairs in this big circle, and we don't make anybody sit anywhere. They don't have to sit with their cabin. They can sit wherever they want, and adults and kids are at the same level. And so one person, usually a counselor, will start the conversation by asking a question, and then anybody else, counselor or camper, can answer the question. Doesn't matter who. And then once they've answered the question, then they raise a question of their own, and then somebody else answers that. And it creates this back and forth and back and forth. And like I said, half to 2/3 of the kids do this instead of playing games after dinner, because I think this is one of the only times in their lives so far where they are taken seriously and where they are at the same intellectual level as the adults in their lives. So the whole rest of the day, from sun up to sundown, they've got to follow orders. They got to go where their counselors tell them. They got to sit where their counselors tell them, eat, all this stuff. They've got to participate, etc. This is the only time when they get to ask questions and everyone is on the same level, and that's how we like it. We want to encourage them to be able to ask questions of counselors and not necessarily see adults as the ones who have all the answers.
Wow,
that's cool.
I want to go to Camp Quest.
So you can find it at campquesttexas.org, and the national organization is campquest.org.
So there could be local chapters, like
they're all
Maryland
over. There's one in Chesapeake, one in Ohio, one in Michigan. There's 2 in California. We have 1 in Texas this year, probably going to split into 2. Just all over. Yeah, there's 1 within driving distance of just about anybody.
Yeah, I think there's one in Maryland, but it's like on the Eastern Shore.
I think that's
distance from us.
The Chesapeake one. Yeah,
it's driving distance, Peter.
yes, it is. So go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna say, what do we want to do?
Let's do the cancer thing real quick. Let's go over cancer because
cancer is a bitch,
more than anything, and we've got all this other shit. So let's at least squeeze some of it in.
So so cancer. So I was trained as a molecular biologist, and I sort of got into cancer sort of serendipitously. I wasn't studying cancer. I was actually studying cardiovascular disease at the time. But I sort of fell into a career as a medical writer, and I do a lot of projects in the pharmaceutical industry, and there's a lot of really cool clinical development in the field of cancer oncology, as it's called. And it just strikes me as really cool to see. So I've been doing this for about a decade now, and to see the progression of the different therapies and sort of the cutting edge, the things that are coming out and being approved now and are being used, and really changing the paradigms for some of these diseases. It's not necessarily, cancer is not necessarily a death sentence anymore. When it used to. Well, I remember when I was a really young kid, one of my great uncles had cancer, and there was hushed tones. Oh no, he's got cancer. You don't want to talk about it. If you say the word out loud, then you'll get it too.
Right.
But one of the things that we're learning that I think is going to really change the game more than anything else is just how different each cancer is, and I say that not just from person to person and situation. Of course, those are all different, and if you get a tumor and you're 20 years old, obviously it's a different experience than if you get it when you're 80 years old. But we're learning now that where it stems from in the part of your body, if it's liver cancer versus if it's brain cancer, those are distinct things. Those are biologically different. They're going to act different ways. And just because it ends up in one place doesn't mean that it's going to act the same as if it ends up in some other place. And as it moves around your body, right? So you could start with breast cancer, for example, and then you could get it in your liver. But if it started from the breast tumor, it's still technically breast cancer. So you've got breast cancer in your liver, and you're going to treat it like breast cancer, not like liver cancer.
God.
But even more than that, if you dig down, and breast cancer is actually a good example for this, because there's been a lot of research into the different types of breast cancer. So even not all breast cancers are the same, right? So there's they kind of divide it into three big categories. There's what's called hormone sensitive or ER/PR positive breast cancer that's driven more by estrogen. And the hormones in women's bodies, and then there's another subtype which is called HER2 positive breast cancer, and HER2 refers to a specific type of growth factor that is found just on these tumors. It's what's called an oncogene. It gets sort of turned on, and it's like putting a brick on your gas pedal in your car. You just sort of leave it there and you walk away, and the engine's going to run and run and run and run. And so these tumors, this is a normal gene. This has normal functions, but if it gets turned on and left on, it's just going to cause these cells to grow and divide and grow and divide and grow and divide at an incredible rate, and that's why you get a tumor. One of the things that has really changed the game is looking at these tumors biologically as what I've been saying as biologically distinct entities, to the point where a HER2 positive breast tumor is something different than an ER/PR positive breast tumor, and you would not treat them the same way. So ER/PR positive is hormone sensitive. You're going to treat that with you could either have an oophorectomy. You could have your ovaries removed if you're old enough and you don't need them anymore, or you could take medications that effectively suppress their activity so that you don't get any more estrogens produced. And if it's severe enough, you might also use chemotherapy. But for HER2 positive disease, you want to use a drug that's been developed specifically to target just that growth factor. And this is the first such drug that was developed is called trastuzumab, and it's actually a monoclonal antibody. So monoclonal means that they're all of the same type. They're all twins, like they're all identical twins basically. And antibodies are, most everybody knows what they are. They're parts of the immune system that circulate throughout your body, and they target different things. Normally we think of them targeting like germs and stuff like that and viruses, but they can actually target pretty much anything. They have very specific like smart markers that zoom into a specific three-dimensional conformation, and we can design them in such a way that they're going to recognize certain genes and proteins.
Wow.
And so one was
real quick. Do they target the cancer cell and then like cause it to self-destruct like with apoptosis or?
That can be one way. Yeah.
Okay.
So promoting I call it apoptosis. That's this is as a small as a small aside. I'm probably in the minority now at this point. I believe the proper pronunciation is apoptosis, but so many people call it apoptosis now that I'm in the minority, so I'm technically wrong. Okay. So I'll take a drink. I'll take a drink because I'm right, but I'm still wrong.
All right, I'll drink with you.
But at any rate, promoting apoptosis is one way. If you can trigger that mechanism, and there are certain drugs that have been developed to try to trigger that apoptotic pathway specifically. Apoptosis basically means that the cell self-destructs, so it dies in a controlled way. It's sort of like when you see, when they're taking down buildings and they put the explosives in there in such a way that the building sort of falls in on itself and there's no mess.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what cells do. So there's two ways of killing a cell. You can kill it like the dirty, nasty way, where it just sort of explodes and gets crap everywhere, or the nice, clean way, where it sort of folds in on itself and it eats itself up from the inside out, and then there's nothing left. So apoptosis is that's actually how you get your fingers, right? So as you're developing in the womb, your hand develops as one big disc of tissue, and then all the cells in between your fingers start dying off.
Unless you're lobster boy.
Neat, right? Yeah, unless you're lobster.
Yeah. So that's apoptosis.
Lobster crawl.
And if you can get cancer cells to do that, then that's fantastic.
That's awesome.
But if you can target those the growth factors and turn those off. Then in theory you should be able to shut the cancer cell down if it's only being driven by that one growth factor. And in terms of HER2 positive disease, it's primarily driven by that, so we can shut that down pretty well and buy women who have this disease like 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 years of life, which is fantastic. The cutting edge will probably be targeting multiple growth factors and different escape pathways, so you'll be combining maybe one or two drugs, and then cancer might actually go away, or it may become like a chronic disease. For example, some forms of leukemia are now essentially a chronic disease that you can keep. There's a pill that you take every day, basically, and it keeps the cancer away.
Kind of like the way some versions. I don't know if this is all versions of AIDS, but the way AIDS is becoming.
It's exactly the same. Yeah.
Wow.
So AIDS, when I was in graduate school, they were developing highly active antiretroviral therapy, HAART, which is it's basically a combination of 2 or 3 different drugs.
Right. It's the cocktail.
Yeah, the cocktail thing. So the cocktail thing works really well for HIV. We're probably going to be moving to that for cancer. The problem, though, is just like with HIV, you combine all those drugs. These are expensive drugs, and one on its own is expensive. Now try combining 3.
Right.
And especially like with that leukemia I mentioned, you just take a pill a day. Well, that's a pill a day for the rest of your life. How much is that going to cost? Who's going to pay for that? Right. So the economic aspect of it, like the scientific aspect of it, is really cool and looks very positive. The economic aspect looks really dreary.
Well, that's just because big pharma,
I'm really worried about. Well, yeah, I mean, believe me, I've been in meetings with pharma people, and they are white as a sheet when they realize how much they're going to have to charge for their drug. They do not. I mean, it's not exactly up to them. I mean, they could charge a nickel for each pill and go out of business tomorrow, and then there's nobody making the pill anymore.
Right.
So they have to.
So let me chime in just real quick, because I hear this argument a lot from people about the big pharma or big oil or big whatever. Okay.
Big whatever.
But it's always easy for you to criticize someone else for being like being business centric and like worrying about your money and your profits and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes out of your pocket, all of a sudden it's like, if you tell them, all right, well then fine, I'll tell you what, why don't you just pay all these people's medical bills? Well, I can't do that. It's like, well,
right.
Yeah, neither can they. It's
right.
like, and you want all this medicine, you want all these things. I was like, but it's like someone has to pay the bill.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Granted, sometimes greed is involved, and sometimes these people make more money than maybe they should, and I get that, okay, and I would say, maybe if they weren't so greedy, they could sell it cheaper. But honestly, it's like,
How much cheaper, really?
how much cheaper really is it really going to make it?
So I do this. I when I have these conversations, I do this thought experiment with people. So I say, look, Pete, I'm going to give you this pill. This pill is the cure for all cancer. And I'm just giving it to you. And I'm telling you that this is what it is. And you can believe me because I'm totally telling the truth. Now, here's this pill.
It's a nice guy.
Now, go out and sell it. Sell this pill that cures cancer. So what are you going to do?
Is it the only pill in the world?
Right.
It's not the only pill in the world. You can make as much of it as you want in your garage.
Right. Okay.
It's super easy and super cheap for you to make. Now go out and sell it.
Okay.
Hey, Pete, I'd like to buy one of them there cancer pills.
All right.
So the short answer is you can't start selling it because the FDA is going to come in and shut you down if you make claims about it curing cancer. The FDA is going to say, no, wait a minute. You just said that this cures cancer. You got to prove that, buddy.
Right.
You got to prove that.
Yeah, remember
You
that
can't just take
FDA?
Zach's word for it. You got to prove that. So now, guess what you got to do? You've
gotta
got
do
to
studies.
create an entire preclinical justification program from scratch, right? So you've just got your garage. You're making tons of this pill. How are you going to put together a preclinical program? for
Hey,
this pill?
I'll tell him I took it to cure my cancer, dude.
How much money is that going to take?
$5.
Pretty easy, yeah. I'll just
Okay,
I'll get
okay.
the food babe to promote it.
Sure.
And
So
I
now
know what
you-
you're saying,
right here. Right here.
So now you've got the preclinical justification. You've got all the good cell models. You've put it in the right mice, and everything looks good. Okay, now the FDA says, all right, now we'll let you do a clinical trial.
Sure.
How are you going to do that?
I'm just going to have some people volunteer all their time because they don't need to eat or feed their families.
Right. And that's just phase one. That's phase one. You might have 20 or 30 patients who volunteer for that, and it might cost you, $5 or $6 million.
Yeah, but Zach, that's what lobbyists are for.
Now
okay?
we're
Push
on to
that
phase-
shit through.
No, but this is the way it works. Now we're on to phase two. All right? Now we're talking another 20, 30, 40, $50 million.
Right,
Good.
because now you have to have like hundreds of people. You can't. The 20 to 30 people was just to prove that there was something there that you could warrant a big study.
Yeah. And now you've got to do let's say that the phase two goes well. Now you've got to do a phase three, and the phase three is the biggest of them all. Phase three trials sometimes have as many as 1,000 patients. Sometimes I've seen phase three trials with like 8,000 patients. No lie.
Right.
8,000 patients. How much money do you think that costs?
That's,
Now we're talking
chunk of
billion with a B.
Billions.
Billion with a B.
Yep.
And now you've spent all that money getting this drug approved. Now tell me how much you're going to charge for one of those pills.
Right. Exactly. No. Totally. Right. I mean, and to not allow these companies to try and recoup their profits means that if you shut
gonna
that
stop doing it.
process down, they're going to stop doing it, and you're not going to get any more of these medicines.
It would be great. It would be great if we could figure out. So one way of doing it would be maybe extending patent life. If you extend so right now patent life is 17 years.
Yeah.
From discovery to end of patent life. If you extended that, then costs might come down, but you would also have longer exclusivity.
And generics, right?
You wouldn't have generics. You
Right.
wouldn't have generics. Another way, if you could find some way of really shortening the preclinical process, that takes a lot of time. It doesn't quite take as much money as the clinical development, but it takes a lot of time, and time is money. When the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
If you could find a way to shorten that process, then you could really change the game for cancer research.
Does the FDA accept other countries' clinical trials at all? Because, I know that there are medicines that maybe make it through trials faster in Europe, and then they're brought over here, but they're still slower. But is there an efficacy for that? Or?
It is tricky, and I don't know if there's a hard and fast rule. What generally tends to happen is the FDA tends to be kind of skeptical about studies that are done outside the United States.
Right.
And vice versa. So if you go to the European Union and you try to get something approved there, if it only has American data, they tend to be pretty skeptical about that too. And not just because it's like looking down your nose at Americans or looking down your nose at Europeans type of thing. There are actual differences in the way patients are treated. And there's different ways in which medicine is practiced in the different regions, and you can't exactly extrapolate from one to the other. They'll do studies for good reasons, right? So you might have a drug where you really want to make this comparison, but some other drug has just been approved in America, and you're not going to be able to recruit any patients to the study because all their doctors are going to be getting them on this new drug, and they're not going to be interested in your clinical trial. Well, that drug has been approved in America, but it's not been approved in Russia. Right. So you can do the clinical trial in Russia where they don't have access to the drug, and it's not an ethical problem because if you try to run the clinical trial in the United States, they're going to say, well, it's unethical because we've got this better drug which has been approved. If they don't have it in Russia, you can do the trial in Russia, but then it's Russian patients, and are Russian patients, do they have the same background, and are they treated the same way as American patients? Maybe yes, maybe no, and it's always a question.
Right, and this is and I'm gonna say if you ever want to get a good feel for what goes into clinical trials and stuff, there's a podcast done by Mark Crisplet. Chris?
Yeah,
Crislip. Damn drink, Crislip. He runs an awesome podcast. Now his Puscast is a little heavy, right? So I mean, it's tough to get through sometimes because it's very, you have to really listen intently, and if you're not extremely science minded, haven't done a lot of you don't have a lot of pre-existing knowledge about science and medicine and stuff, it's a little hard to get through. But his Puscast, his Quackcast is awesome, and he has a couple episodes that are very, very strong on how clinical trials go and this whole process.
I always, whenever people come to me, a lot of people that I know that I'm involved in cancer research, not doing it, but in reporting on it, and they ask for my advice sometimes if they're diagnosed, and I always, if there's a clinical trial that they're eligible for, I always urge them to have their doctor try to enroll them, because not only are you going to get the best possible medical care, so clinical trials are always designed to give patients at least the best possible medical care, and maybe a free experimental drug that could do something fantastic, but it also advances the science of the field, right? So what better way than to get treated for a disease that you have anyway, and also advance the field. To me, it's just a no-brainer.
Right. All right. So real quick, because we're running out of time, let's go through this. One question I had, and you touched on this before, but I just want to I think it's a really important question. Is cancer? All right. So I know we get cancer cells in our body all the time. That's my understanding. And our body usually takes care of it. It's when our body stops taking care of it and it takes hold. Just correct me if I'm wrong, because this is how I understand it.
Yeah,
is when we actually get cancer, as it were. So can we view cancer as somewhat of an immune deficiency in some ways? Is it proper to say that?
So that's one hypothesis, I guess. So there are lots of different ways in which we look at cancer and how it comes about. So one way is the development of mutations. As we get older, our cells acquire more mutations, and they also lose bits of telomeres, and so the regulatory regions start to get eaten into, and we can also have chromosomal translocations, and there are very clear examples of very strongly genetically driven tumors. And again, every type of cancer is different, so it all depends. In a broad context, yes. I mean, even if you do have these weird genetic events and abnormalities, as soon as that happens in a cell, that should be something that triggers a response by your immune system and says, wait a minute, there is something going on in this cell. So your immune system has a way of detecting that. And it says, there's something weird going on. Let's just go in there and turn that cell off and kill it, basically, and get rid of the problem. And so as we get older, and this would explain why cancer is much more common among people who are older or people who are immunocompromised. That would definitely explain that. It doesn't explain all cancer, but it is definitely a major component. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So that is all right. So good. So I understand that problem. So and this last question I'm gonna have on cancer. Listen, any of my other co-hosts to have them. Do you see big promise in stem cells being a big part of cancer treatment in the future? Like being able to just blow out an area that normally you couldn't blow out because a person can't live without it, but then you can like just burn it out and then put stem cells in to regrow that section that they need. Like say for example bone cancer. Let's say you get like this really bad bone cancer and you just burn the marrow out of there, get rid of all the bad cells, and then just deploy a bunch of stem cells in there to grow that marrow back because you can't live without it.
And then 3D print this scaffolding and all that stuff, right?
Right. But yeah, I mean, and 3D printing is a good example, of like, you got liver cancer, all right? Take the fucking liver out, print them a new one, and put it back in.
Print them a new one. Yeah.
I mean,
so
does that have any promise? You think?
Well, in fact, that's actually standard of care for many different types of blood cancers. It's called bone marrow transplant. There's two different ways of doing it. There's what's called autograft, where they pull out some of your bone marrow and culture it in a dish, and they grow it up, and then they irradiate your entire body and kill off all your bone marrow, and then inject your own bone marrow back into you. And in that process, the goal is that they've eliminated all the cancer cells that are in your bone marrow, and they're only injecting back the good ones. It doesn't necessarily always work, but it is potentially curative. So you can actually cure somebody using that technique. Another way of doing it is what's called an allograft, where you're using somebody else's marrow. So maybe your marrow isn't good enough, but you could, maybe if you have a sibling or an identical twin, optimally, you could use their bone marrow. So you do the same thing. You irradiate your entire body, kill off all your bone marrow, and inject that back yourself. So that is something that is done. That is potentially curative. In terms of doing that in other parts of the body, it's difficult. Really, the bone marrow is the best way of doing that right now. Although I will point out that there is another hypothesis that's sort of gaining steam, getting a bit more evidence behind it, that cancer is itself a disease of the stem cell population in our bodies.
What?
Right? So if you look at the types of things that the types of characteristics that stem cells have, and then you look at the types of characteristics that cancer cells have, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of similarities, and so one of the things that the scientific community has been looking at is whether or not there might be a population of cells in our bodies they call them cancer stem cells, a population of cells that sort of exist at a separate level and create tumors and are sort of undergoing continual replication and self-maintenance, but they themselves are not recognized as tumors. So when we go in and we see somebody with a tumor and we treat the tumor, cut it out or whatever, we've cut out the tumor, but we haven't removed the stem cells that gave rise to the tumor, and so then the tumor comes back.
It's like the root.
Yeah, and so they're exactly like Groot. So if Groot was a tumor.
No, I said root like the root. But
Groot's even better.
Or Groot.
But yeah, Groot works.
If Groot was a tumor. Yeah, so you cut it out and then it grows back. And it may be because there's a population of stem cells that are supplying the sort of origin cells that give rise to the tumor. And there is some evidence to support this. We're not completely on board at this point. But if this is true, then it will change the way we treat cancers, because we won't just be trying to target the tumor. We'll target the tumor and the tumor stem cell population at the same time, and then that might actually be the cure.
Sweet.
So who
Okay.
knows?
Mind
let's hope.
blown.
All right, science, do your thing, and people support science. Stop fucking around with it.
Yeah.
Support it, straight up. All right, so Dr. Zach, we have to move on to another part of the show. I could talk to you all night. I mean, literally, we could go another 3 hours talking about shit.
Sure.
We didn't even get into brain cancers, which are a completely different thing, and developing drugs through the blood-brain barrier and all that. I would like to get to that, but we can't. Just real quick, you also have Doubting Thomas's, which is your blog.
Mm-hmm.
You and your partner or friend of yours?
Yep. He's a Christian. I'm an atheist. We're
okay.
the doubting Thomases. We
Not that
we
there's
look
anything
at
wrong.
issues from both sides of the fence.
I like that. Okay, and then you have a new project called Gospel of Doubt, which you're working
Gospel
on,
of Doubt.
which is a writing project, and I think there's 12 of you, 12 apostles of.
10. There'll be 10 of us.
Okay, 10.
So we'll have 10 different gospels in this book, and the goal is to basically evangelize doubt as a positive thing to the mainstream American church.
Okay, cool. All right, so all the links are in our video thing. So I'll go over them just real quick. But if you are not you don't have a pen handy at the moment, you can always come back to this video. Let's see. There's gospelofdoubt.net, doubtingthomases.net, foundationbeyondbelief.org. I'm going to spell this one apologia-podcast.com. Dr. Zach's Facebook is facebook.com/MOOREZW. You can find him on Twitter at DRZach, and he has a YouTube channel. Strangely enough.
If you can't get enough of me already.
Right. YouTube.com/MOOREZW.
There you go.
And we'd like you to stick around if you would. We have a game.
Sure.
Mike has a fun game. And
Yes.
Brian has some geek news that we'd like you to comment on. So,
All right.
Mike, you ready for your game?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mike.
Queuing it up any minute.
So let me.
I do this, and then I do this,
We do a lot of that. This and this.
and then I hit that button. Atomic batteries to power.
All right. So hold on. I have to do a.
Nope. Wrong
sharing
one.
thing here.
That screen goes full screen. There you go. Okay, so
hold
we
on,
haven't played Movie Poster Madness in a long time, and so I decided to pull one of these out. Basically, if you guys could just grab a piece of pen and paper, or pencil, paper. You can write on your hand if you want.
To write on.
Yes.
Okay.
A scribe, a rock, and a mallet.
Chisel.
Chisel. So basically, all right, we got 5 movie posters, and they will be displayed. All words have been removed from the poster. Your mission, which you will choose to accept, will be to correctly name the movie advertised in the poster. Each correct answer will earn you 1 point. Earning at least 2 points qualifies you for the bonus round, where your true movie medal shall be tested, and Big Movie Poster Madness Wiener shall be crowned. That is not a misspelling. The winner will be crowned. Or the winner's wiener. Anyway, okay. Are we ready?
All right, let's go.
Here we go. Number 1. And basically, we're going to go through all 5, and then we'll review at the end, okay? So this is number 1. That is a movie poster. Let me know when all of you have scribed and scribbled.
Done.
Peter?
Good to go.
All right. Number 2.
Done.
1 done, 2 undone.
Okay. Good to go.
2 done. Brian.
Yep.
All right. Number 3.
Shit.
Ooga chaka. I'm going to count to 5, 4, 3, 2,
Done.
1.
Done.
All right. Yeah.
Good enough?
It is what it is.
All right. Number 4. Cuatro.
Done.
Done.
Good to go.
All right. And numero 5.
Done.
Okay.
Done.
Oh, okay. So basically, I didn't write anything on that page, so how did you do? Let's take a look. Every correct answer earns you 1 point moving toward the bonus round. Remember, you must have at least 2 points in order to advance, unless your name is Dr. Zachary Moore, in which case we'll let it slide. But I have a feeling he knows at least 2. So, answer each of the following questions correctly. Oh, so, okay, here we go. Number 1. Oh, I guess I should have asked for a question first. I haven't done this in a while.
We haven't played this game.
Yeah,
It's
so
been a while
everyone
since we
gets
played this
a point. Jesus Christ.
No,
All right.
but we wrote it
At
down.
least, I was gonna say we wrote it down. We can prove it.
Yeah.
We'll go with honesty system. All right. So. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Mike.
All right. Because I can't see anything because I'm full screen, so
All right.
was everybody correct?
Yes.
Pretty
Office
much.
Space, Yep.
Yep.
All right. Cheaters beware. All right. Now, number 2. How about we do it this way this time? Number 2. What do you think, Brian?
I honestly was lost on it.
All right.
I couldn't get it.
Oh, here, we can go back and look again. Number 2. There we go. That's number 2. So, Brian, all right, Peter?
I said Showgirls.
Yeah.
And Dr. Zach? All right. So
Agreed.
you two are correct. So that leaves you guys with 2 points and Brian with 1. And we'll go back to number 3 again.
All I know is that Seth Rogen does the voice. I can't remember the name of the movie.
All right.
It's
Brian.
Paul.
It's Paul.
Fuck! I said, yeah, I got the wrong name.
Okay. Hey, the good news is you're all moving on to the bonus round. However, number 4.
Oh, no, that one.
All right.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite movies of all times. That
Oh,
there,
what do we get? What do we
that
get?
there is Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange.
All
Yeah,
right.
Clockwork-
There
That's
you
correct.
go.
Clockwork Orange.
All right.
The old ultraviolence.
And the last one, which...
Poltergeist.
Here.
Come on, Poltergeist.
Poltergeist.
And what do you know? Okay, now, you all have moved on to the bonus round. This bonus round
Right.
is a pilot project I've just been working on. So bear with me. Yes, I've actually done this other part before, so this will be fun. Okay.
Yeah, okay, good.
So here we go. We are in the bonus round. I'm going to let you see all these movies. You can see the pictures of them clearly.
Okay.
All right, and I am going to go, basically, if somebody gets this answer correct, we move on to the next question. If somebody gets it wrong, one person has a chance, the next person in the list. It goes Brian, Pete, Zach, okay? So, and we just keep rotating that way. So if it's Brian gets it wrong, Pete can guess. Then we just go on to the next question for Zach, okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Which movie of these 5 has the highest domestic gross earnings of all time? Brian,
Ooh.
you get to go first.
Ooh.
Ooh, good. Ooh, this is good, Mike.
Domestic, right? Oh,
Domestic.
all time.
Ooh.
Oh, and it's a tie between 2 in my mind. I'm going to take a stab and say, no pun intended, Clockwork Orange.
Wrong. Pete, your chance to steal.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's too cult, even though it's like one of the greatest movies ever.
Greatest movies of all time.
I love this movie. I'm gonna go with Poltergeist.
You are correct. With
Yeah.
2
Yeah,
points.
that was the other choice.
Yep. All right, so we go to Zach.
Okay.
Which movie has the lowest budget of all these movies?
Ooh. Interesting. I would probably say Office Space.
That is incorrect.
Incorrect.
Brian, your chance to steal.
I'm going to go with Stanley again. Stanley Man, Clockwork Orange, lowest budget.
Clockwork Orange is correct. Oh, and by the way, the highest. Let me go back for a second. Poltergeist grossed $76.6 million all time, and Clockwork Orange had a production budget of $2.2 million.
Wow.
Genius! Genius, this guy!
I know.
Wow.
Okay. All right. So who answered? Where did that go? That was a. Brian, do you answer that correctly?
Yes, I
That
did.
was 2 points to you. Okay. Now we go to Pete.
Yes.
Pete, which movie has the highest production budget?
What?
You see these 5 movies in front of you.
Wait a
One of them,
Did we just do budget? Wait a minute, didn't we?
highest.
No, no, no,
You
no,
said
no.
lowest. Okay, now we're
production.
highest. Okay.
Production budget. We just did the lowest budget. Now we're doing the highest budget to big.
I'm gonna go with Poltergeist again.
Incorrect.
Ooh.
Zach, your chance to steal.
I'm going to say Paul because of the CGI.
That was a good guess. However, that would also be wrong. The highest budget
It must be
is
Showgirls.
is Showgirls, yes, at $45 million.
What a waste of money.
Indeed. All right. We move on to Brian. Brian, which movie's budget exceeded its earnings the most? In other words, which of these movies
Made a bigger profit.
made the worst profit?
Oh, made the worst profit.
Yes. In other words, which movie's budget exceeded its budget, its earnings
Yeah, okay.
by the most?
Which movie made the worst
There's a
profit?
better way to say that, but we'll save that for the.
Which
the-
Which
movie
movie lost the most money?
Yeah, there you go.
Which movies suck the most for the investors?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Pete. I knew I could count on you.
Oh, man.
Anytime there, Brian.
I'll go with...
Your own news.
I'm going to go with...
There's only 5. You got a 1 in 5 chance here, buddy.
I will cut you,
Hey,
Mike. Let
buddy.
me think. We'll go with Showgirls because of that production budget.
You are correct.
Yeah,
Showgirls.
guess there.
Showgirls grossed $20.4 million and cost $45 million to make.
Oh, shit, what a turn.
All right. Pete,
Yes.
which movie is the... Okay, let me
I'm not
work on my
peeing.
Englishes.
I'm not peeing. I'm pouring a drink.
You're English.
You're English.
Oh, which movie has the longest running time?
It sure
Those are
seemed like
brutal.
Showgirls. Um,
You know you never saw Showgirls, so shut up.
I did. No, dude, I did watch it. I did
Oh,
watch it. I got through the first 15 minutes. No, for the towel. No, I mean.
I was going to say, that counts because you can't refund your ticket.
Right. I'm gonna say longest running. Now this is not like director's cut or anything like that, right? This is just straight up.
Theatrical cut.
Yes,
Theatrical
theatrical cut, yes.
I'm gonna say Showgirls.
That is incorrect. Zach, your chance to steal.
Clockwork Orange?
That is correct. Clockwork Orange had a running time, even back then in 1982, of 2 hours and 17 minutes.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
You know,
That's
All
fine.
right. We go to Brian. Which movie broke even? Which of these movies, well, like basically was a broke even to make?
Which one broke even?
That's a good question.
That's a damn good question.
Yeah. Hey, I got the answer right here.
I suppose you do.
By the way, Brian has everyone had 2 points going in, so Brian has 4 points, Pete and Zach are at 2.
I'm going to go with Office Space.
You are going to go with Office Space, and you would be correct!
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Nice.
Brian is our resident movie, god. Let's see. That is Pete. This goes to you. Which of these movies has an NC-17 rating?
Oh, that's Showgirls.
That is correct. And the last question goes to Dr. Zach. Which of these movies is the only one with a PG rating?
Ooh. PG.
PG.
Hey, hint. It's not Clockwork Orange.
Yeah, not Clockwork Orange. I don't think it's Office Space either.
It ain't Showgirls.
Right.
Because they have the scene where the guy's watching the commercial of the lady doing a breast self-exam. That would never get a PG rating. I'm going to guess it's Poltergeist.
Dr. Zach, you are correct.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Is Office Space the
Poltergeist.
one with the O face?
Yes.
The old face is getting a PG rating, but not the breast self-exam.
Paul had a PG rating, and
Paul had PG?
Paul had a R.
R,
Office
okay.
Space, Clockwork Orange had a R. Showgirls, NC-17, Poltergeist.
Yeah, I can't
PG.
imagine anything Seth Rogen being involved in getting a
Yeah, I
PG
know.
rating.
All right,
Sweet.
so
All right, so-
very good. Brian, you are
Right.
this week's wiener. Let me crown it. I mean, you.
Yay, Brian.
Hey, Brian, you're crowning.
Like a bris.
All right, so
So
to
that's
keep the
me.
show on track, Brian is our big wiener. Hey, big ups for Brian. Brian, you want to do any kind of victory dance this week? Because you don't generally win too often.
Eh. It's really that's all I got. And you get Nixon.
I won the game. I won.
Haru.
All right, so Brian, what's going on in the world of
Pete.
What? I'm sorry. What?
Pete, I gotta duck out.
Oh,
I got a big data barrel. I'm sorry. I really am pissed off that I'm not gonna be able to shag on the news. So I'm gonna tell you, Zach, you have really gotta step up. You gotta pull my weight, which I mean I'm a big fella,
That's
so
a
you
lot
gotta
of
pull
weight.
my weight and really make some funny. Be funny, okay?
Okay.
No challenge. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure.
All right,
No
Mike.
pressure.
See you later, brother.
Peace out, y'all. Love you.
All right,
Okay.
Okay,
bye.
Mike.
All right, so Brian, what's going on in the world of geekdom?
Let's see. I got some interesting stuff here. Are you guys familiar with the Star Wars Rebels cartoon that's playing on the Disney Channel? It's that 3.5-ish episode.
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I haven't actually watched it, and I bet it's good.
I've
Well-
seen some like clips or something. It looks kind of like cutesy and goofy, like
It's just like it's sort of like the Clone Wars cartoon
yeah. Okay.
that played back in the day. Well, Billy D. Williams is making a return voicing Lando Calrissian because he's coming back in a little cameo for the new season of Star Wars Rebels, and I think that's going to be interesting. Billy D. Williams needs more work. He needs more work. I love
Lando.
Williams.
I love
But when he
Lando.
does work, he works every time.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
right.
yeah. I love Lando. Lando is a badass motherfucker. He is a cool character.
Oh yeah, man. That actually made me very, very excited. So, speaking of Star Wars, one of these Star Wars spin-offs hit a snag as one of the writers stepped down, but other famous screenwriter Simon Kinberg is rumored to be taking over for writing the Star Wars spin-off. So this might be very interesting because
Do we know what the spin-off is yet?
it's still speculated to be either the Boba Fett or kind of bounty hunter heist movie, or even a Han Solo origin movie.
Right.
So this is a feature film then.
Yeah.
Feature film. Yeah. Disney announced that starting this year, we're going to have a Star Wars movie every year. for
And
a while.
sometimes two movies, I think, right?
Right.
Well, they said, let's see.
Like there might be like a regular canon movie and then a spin-off.
Well, here's the actual basic rumor. The rumor outline for the screenplay that's being put out is it's a bounty hunter heist movie, sort of like Ocean's 11, where it's just before A New Hope. It's Boba Fett, and they're essentially they plan to steal the first Death Star's blueprints.
Oh my
Okay.
God.
Yeah.
So that might be interesting. I'm digging that.
That's hilarious.
Hey, I'm digging it. I'm
You know
digging
what?
it.
Hey, you really want to make that shit work? Okay, make that motherfucker R-rated, right? have Quentin Tarantino write it, and you will have the highest grossing movie in the fucking history of movies.
Yeah.
Because you'll have all the Star Wars people, all the Tarantino people, you'll be breaking molds. Dude, I'm telling you, that would be a super fucking winner. Like a Reservoir Dogs meets Star Wars. Like, so whoever steals the plans, right, they all die. But the princess gets the plans anyway, right?
I would happily take, if Tarantino wouldn't do it, I would happily take Guy Ritchie. I mean, because
okay, Guy Ritchie, yeah, I'm good. I'm down. Guy Ritchie, I'm in.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or does this like whole concept just sort of break your brain? Like, I can't even really picture how a Star Wars movie that's not like all Lucased up would be like. You know?
We might be feeling that. I mean, we might be getting that.
Because it's not technically Lucased up, since he's kind of...
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it will not be the Lucas version anymore, and I don't. It's hard for me to even conceive of that.
We'll see this Christmas. I mean, the trailer, teaser that Abrams showed us showed some good signs. I mean, there were signs of practical effects, just like in the '70s original trilogy. You know, it's interesting.
I'll tell you, I'm kind of the molder of the Star Wars universe, because like the first 3 movies were okay. I liked them. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, by far my favorite of all time. If they could have all been like that, I would have been in heaven. And then the first 3, episode 1, 2, and 3, I didn't hate them like a lot of people do, but I didn't really whatever. Star Wars has the potential. I want to believe. I want to love Star Wars like a lot of these Star Wars fans do. But we'll see. You know, maybe Abrams will bring it, and if he does, I'll be happy. But I worry that if I'm happy, that most Star Wars fans won't be, because what I want out of Star Wars...
You feel like you're more mainstream than...
I love Tarantino. I like stuff that's kind of rough and kind of wild and like
yeah.
You know, Alien, not the Alien. It's hard because some of the Alien stuff I like. I'm a Riddick guy. Like, I love sci-fi, but I like the dirty, rough, kind of more adult sci-fi. So like I love the Riddick series. I like Star Trek. I liked Abrams' Star Trek, and I know it wasn't like. I know it's not canon. You know, we've talked about this before. It's definitely his own vision. So I'm really interested in seeing what he does with Star Wars. I really want to love it. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually glad you mentioned Riddick, because there's some speculation, according to a cover photo that Vin Diesel had on his Facebook page a while ago, that he's going to be involved in the Inhumans movie for Marvel Phase 3. And people are already speculating he's going to play the leader of the Inhumans, Black Bolt.
So another role where he doesn't say anything.
But here's the thing. This is where my comic book side shines.
Thanks, I guess.
Well, no, here's the thing. Here's Black Bolt in a nutshell. Same endurance, strength, and mobility and agility as Captain America. He's much stronger than an average human being, much faster, much more resilient. His main ability from the Terrigen Mist is that the vibration from his vocal cords actually interact with electrons and matter. Basically, if he utters even a slight sound, it can destroy small bits of matter. In the later comics, basically, here's a scale of his powers. If he whispers something, a building will shake. If he screams at the top of his lungs, a planet will explode. So he trains himself constantly to never utter a sound, even in his sleep. And a lot of the Inhumans have telepathic antennae in their costumes. That's how they talk to each other. But this is where my comic book side kicks in. I'm calling it now. Black Bolt is going to kill Thanos at the very end.
Oh, really? You think he's going to blow him up?
They're going to go with that death, because it's been done in the comics already. Black Bolt has killed Thanos once. Because if you look at the slots they've done, Inhumans plays right before Avengers 3 Part 2.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm getting. I'm calling it. Black Bolt is going to be the one. And I always just love it because, Vin Diesel has that real rough, growly voice. Imagine just him screaming at the top of his lungs and just Thanos.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm excited for all these like superhero stuff. I love superhero movies.
oh yeah. Well, then good. There's more news because now we're going to the other side of the coin, the
Okay.
DC side of the coin.
Okay.
Oh boy.
So a couple weeks ago, someone showed an interesting photo on Instagram revealing a potential that the Batman v Superman movie is going to be a two-parter. And
Okay.
supposedly the first part was going to be played this October, and it was going to be titled Enter the Night, which is to set up the new Batman. Not Nolan's Batman, but Batfleck. And it was going to be premiering, I believe the date, you can easily find this on cinemablend.com. The date was October 25th, 2015, and then The Dawn of Justice, the original title, is actually going to be the part 2 that plays March 2016. Now, there's been a recent update that just happened literally yesterday. Henry Cavill, the main actor who plays Superman, denies this. It's like, no, we're not splitting it into 2 movies. So it was an interesting rumor for the time being, but don't let that get you down, because there's some speculation from a Twitter post that the Batman Superman teaser is going to play during the premiere of Jupiter Ascending.
Ooh, okay.
It's just about the right time because Marvel's been putting out teasers a year before movies are coming out now. A lot of companies are actually doing that now, and it is slated for March next year. So, and Jupiter's Ascending comes out mid-February, so it would be just about the right time for us to see a teaser. And people are speculating it's the teaser that people got to see at San Diego Comic-Con, and even I got to see because someone managed to film it on an iPhone.
Right.
So that's going to be something interesting. So a little bit of tech news.
Well, hold on, wait.
Google.
Real quick, let's roll back real quick.
Yeah.
So Zach, what do you think about Batfleck? I mean, I have my opinions and stuff, and he, dude.
Oh sure, we can talk about Batman vs Superman, but we're just going to whittle it down to casting choice. Okay, I see.
Okay, right. Yeah, that I am. You can talk about whatever you want, but I'm going to whittle it down to that.
Okay.
So, what is your feeling on it? Because I'll tell you, I'll go first. He's starting to grow on me. The pictures I've been seeing, and I don't like Ben Affleck.
That chin.
Have you seen anything other than sad Batfleck?
I have seen some pictures. I have seen some pictures.
Have you seen Argo, The Town?
I have not seen the movie Argo, but I will say, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Ben Affleck, but
right.
He's not a terrible actor. I think he's been cast in a lot of shitty roles, right? So I think
I've read the screenplay for Deadpool. It's not Deadpool, Daredevil. Oops, he almost made people mad for Daredevil, and it's terrible.
Right. So like Daredevil, I don't want to hold that against him because
Right.
it was a shitty movie, and it doesn't matter who was in it; it would have been crappy. But I think like he was in Dogma, he was fine. There was a movie. What was it? Was it Syriana? Was that the one he was in with George Clooney?
Then I think that was it. And then there's also Chasing Amy, and that movie's in the Criterion Collection now, and that's a Kevin Smith movie. So
Right. So he's not a terrible actor. He's actually a pretty decent actor. I think he's made some bad fucking choices. So I don't know. What do you think, Dr. Zach?
Well, so with the actor sort of be under the cowl, I don't think it matters quite so much. I mean, maybe that sounds kind of antithetical to the whole geekdom, but I mean, I think it's the cowl. It's not the actor under the cowl. I mean, all you have to do is, I mean, we've had how many Batmans have we had?
Yeah, we've had Keaton, Kilmer, Clooney.
we also have to include West.
Adam West.
Of course, Adam West, right? Yeah. And then
Bale. There's a good plethora.
Christian Bale was Newsies, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I mean. So I mean, it doesn't really bother me. The
All I
only
can say is, better just step up your game, prove these people wrong, because he has admitted that this was a dream role of his.
I'm
Yep.
sure. Well, it'd be a dream role for anybody. It depends on how much time he spends as Bruce Wayne. I think that's where the casting tends to be weakest.
Yeah.
So whoever you cast as Batman has to play Bruce Wayne, and you know, some people are able to pull that off. Some people are not so much. I think Val Kilmer was a terrible Bruce Wayne.
Right.
I think George Clooney could have been a better Bruce
he had
Wayne.
His moments, like
he had some moments.
Like when Alfred was dying, you know.
Yeah,
I think you know. All right, so I'll go to Heath Ledger. When I heard Heath Ledger was going to play the Joker, you know, the only thing that I had really known Heath Ledger for, and I'm not a big fan of his or anything like that.
Like a Knight's Tale or
Knight's Tale, right? Exactly, Knight's Tale. And I thought Knight's Tale was this fucking god awful. It was just like a shit movie. I was like, what the fuck is this, right? And so I'm thinking Heath Ledger's gonna play the Joker. Really? Who the hell can? And then he was the best Joker that could ever be. I don't think he could. Personally, I just don't think he could be outdone. That Joker was fucking phenomenal. And,
right.
You know, if Ben Affleck comes and does that, he's gonna prove me wrong, just like Heath Ledger did.
Well, and this is, you know, that role also is an iconic role.
Yeah.
And when you come to a character like that, I mean, you come to a character like Daredevil. I mean, who the fuck gives a shit about Daredevil? But you come to a role that everyone knows, and so much ink has been spilled on, you know, what. You know, like it's kind of frightening to me. Like I liked Batman when I was a kid, and I watched the Adam West stuff. And then, you know, then my cousin gave me, what was it, The Dark Knight Returns or something like that, Frank Miller. And I'm like, holy shit, what is this? And, you know, and now, like, that's sort of like the de facto normal Batman is this, like, psychologically tortured, twisted, you know, kind of asshole, basically, with a lot of money and, you know, a complex. And the character has expanded beyond any actor that could play him. And so any actor to come into that, I think, is going to have to really push himself into, you know, what the role demands of him. So I don't really care. I mean, it could be Ben Affleck, it could be, you know, whoever.
Pretty much.
Could be
but yeah, I mean,
at this point.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, you know, Jared Leto's going to have to step up his game because he's playing the Joker in the Suicide Squad movie as well.
Yeah.
He's done a good job with other projects. Dallas Buyers Club, he did a great job.
Yeah.
In that movie. But yeah, so I got one last bit of news. Google is supposedly going to be revealing a new system for real-time voice translation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So this is going to be interesting. So the New York Times reports that Google is about to release an updated version of the Translate app for Android. So it's going to be very interesting because it's claiming that it'll automatically recognize speech in popular languages and change it into text. So that's just some of the basic things it'll do. So that, you know.
So are we talking Star Trek translator?
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah.
What? We're living in the future, man. We're living
Yeah.
in the future.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the thing that I find really interesting, especially since, you know, last month Microsoft, Skype unveiled a program for real-time translation for human speech, but now Google always steps it up to the plate. Whenever someone announces something, Google usually shows up and one-ups them.
Google goes,
Say, oh yeah? Bam!
Google's
That
like,
and golden tires.
Google's
Wow.
like, that ain't shit. Watch this.
Pretty much, because I've actually, me and Adrian actually looked at what it takes to work for Google, to even apply for Google. They take the cream of the crop to work for that company. Their intern requirements, I mean, that's why the internship movie, the movie was terrible, but it did give you a bit of an insight of somewhat, in a satirical way, how Google hires employees. It even takes interns. Most of these people have to be able to do, like, calculus on a whim. And it's like, it shows why Google's, I think, going to be one of the, or if not the dominating entity of technology. They're going to be the monopoly. You know, it's going to be all under Google.
Skynet.
Yep.
Yeah, see? Exactly. So that's going to be interesting. So, you know, since you guys mentioned Daredevil, I know a lot of people have known this, but just in case people have missed it, the release date for the Marvel Netflix Daredevil series has been pushed from May to this April. April 10th is going to be the premiere for the Daredevil television show on Netflix.
Hey, hold on real quick. So we haven't interacted with our chat room at all, but David Benavides, our true fan, says he says it's talking about the Google Translator. He says it's not a great translator. It does words, but kind of like Yoda translate.
Yoda translate. Well, I'll take Yoda as my translator if I don't have another translator, right? I mean,
Pretty much.
You know what? Give it the Yoda voice, and I'm cool with it.
yes.
Have Frank Oz voice everything.
Oh my God.
That would be awesome.
My son. This is crazy. So my son, somebody gave him a Yoda doll for his 3rd birthday, and he loves it. And he somehow, I didn't tell him that it was Yoda. Somebody told him it was Yoda, I guess. So now he knows that it's Yoda, and he plays with it. And he's like, "This is from Star Wars, isn't it, Dad?" And I said, "Yeah, it's from Star Wars." He says, "Do I like Star Wars?" And I said, "I hope you will."
Or as my daughter calls him, the little green guy.
The little green guy, yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I really have. Oh, no, I don't.
Uh-oh.
Got
What?
one last thing.
Okay.
Bonus.
From the wonderful world of Disney. So it turns out they're remaking Pete's Dragon.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, they're remaking Pete's Dragon. I had no idea this was going on until I found this article from Cinema Blend again. Because they just added 2 major actors to the cast. So it looks like Michael C. Hall from Dexter's actually going to be joining.
Wait a minute. What? Okay.
Yeah, Michael C. Hall
Okay.
is going to be joining, and I just had the list. Come on.
So wait. So is this like a 3D animation, or is this going to be a cartoon, or what are we talking
We,
about?
we,
I'm sure it's CGI and live action.
we don't know. They said, let's see, they're going to try and stay true to the style. It's Wes Bentley. I knew I had it on the tip of my tongue. So Wes Bentley from the Hunger Games as well.
Okay.
So we got Wes Bentley, who was also the bad guy in the terrible Ghost Rider movie, and Michael C. Hall joining Robert Redford and Bryce Dallas Howard
Right.
in Pete's Dragon. So that's going to be interesting.
Okay.
And Benedict Cumberbatch as the dragon.
Right. Of course.
Of course.
Smog.
It's like, hello, my name is Elliot. Let's go on an adventure. I remember Pete's Dragon. I remember watching that as a kid.
They should,
So
they
that's
should
gonna be
remake.
interesting.
They should remake every movie with Benedict Cumberbatch as like this animated character, so like we can do the Never-Ending Story again. and we
Oh,
can
yeah.
do-
Just get all the screenplays of any concept that had an imaginary dragon, Dragonheart, Neverending Story,
right.
all that. Just have them redub them. Here, read these, and then just ADR it, and then just fan edits of those movies.
Right.
Better idea. Let's have Benedict Cumberbatch do ADR over all of Sean Connery's roles.
Oh, right. He could be James
Including-
Bond. He could be.
Including James Bond, yeah.
Highlander.
We'll just clean out that Scottish accent and replace it with good, fresh Cumberbatch.
Sweet. Okay. I'm down.
Good
Let's do
fresh Cumberbatch. That sounds like a slogan. Enjoy yourself some good fresh
it. Fresh
Cumberbatch.
Cumberbatch.
It's the best in Manchester.
But yeah, it's a shame, ladies, because he got hitched
Oh,
off the
well.
market.
Oh well. There goes my prison bitch. Well, anyway.
Oh, hey man, the man's playing Doctor Strange.
Right.
That's
I mean,
true.
come
You know
on.
And I kind of wanted Joaquin Phoenix.
I can see that.
They were
This is
talking
gonna
about
sound weird. This is gonna sound weird, but
What?
I actually wanted Keanu Reeves to get the role.
Really, Keanu Reeves?
Well, because here's the thing. I'm
Okay.
gonna give you one reason. It has 2 words. It's John Wick.
Okay.
That movie showed that he definitely got better as an actor. He actually emotes more.
Okay, so
And-
Brian, remember we were dogging on 47 Ronin because all the critics were dogging on it and shit? So
Yeah.
I watched it because I was like, well, I've been talking shit about it. I might as well see it. It's a fucking good movie. I liked it. I don't know what the critics are talking about. I thought it was great. I mean,
I recently watched it again.
And the ending was very Asian. I mean, like, if they had a problem with the ending, I'm kind of like, well, then you don't understand Asian movies. If you're not ready for a fucking, like, horrible, tragic ending, then you probably shouldn't be watching Asian movies.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
I see points of... I see it as maybe between cult classic and guilty pleasure. That's kind of where I'm seeing it, because I rewatched it and I digested it more, and you know, there are some things I appreciate because I'm a person who enjoys watching Asian films. I mean, sure. I own all the S2E02 films. I own Seven Samurai, and you know, I just recently got my dad Throne of Blood, another Akira Kurosawa movie for his birthday. We love Asian films here at this house.
But I'm not gonna say that it was like a great, like, you know, awesome super movie of all time, like a Blade Runner or something like that. But shit, I don't know why people are dogging it so bad. I thought it was decent.
It'd be a solid add to your Netflix queue, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. I would watch it on Netflix. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, and the reason I kind of wanted, it's a personal reason, is because I want to see him succeed. Because John Wick was a great action movie. When I watched it...
I know what, everything I've read about Keanu Reeves, he seems like a really cool dude.
Yeah.
Like, just
he's very generous, very down to earth, and he does all his own stunts. He's 51 and he still does his own stunts.
And so I'm a big fan of the Nerdist podcast, and he had Keanu Reeves on there, and it was just like, it was very endearing. I was just like, you know, he really is. You know, I didn't like him in The Matrix. I thought he was very wooden, and I don't know why. I mean, maybe that was
his... The man's Canadian.
Well, maybe that was
partially Canadian.
Maybe that was his take on the character, but I just felt like I didn't give a shit about Neo. Like, I cared about everybody but him.
Everybody but Neo, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, maybe that was just his take on that character's role.
That and probably how it was written. I don't know, because you know, one of the front runners for Neo was actually Will Smith.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a fan.
That was one of the original front runners for that role. Yeah. But
it wasn't him, and that's a personal thing. I just don't like Will Smith.
I liked TV Will Smith, and maybe Men in Black.
I liked Welcome to Earth.
Yeah, I was gonna say Welcome to Earth. I was gonna pull that.
I like that.
Independence Day was
walking across a desert with a cigar.
And a dead alien in a parachute.
Yeah.
Oh God, that was horrible.
But I love the first Men in Black movie. I will admit, I love the first Men in Black movie.
That was a good one.
Well, I gotta pull the plug because we have time.
All right.
Dr. Zach, thanks for gracing us with your presence.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Awesome guest. If you have any time.
Sure.
You know, hit us up. We will definitely we'll have you back on. We'll promote you through our any promotional channels that we have. But let me give your links real quick one more time. I just gotta find them. Okay, here we go. So you can find Dr. Zach with come on, where are they? Sorry, I got like 6 things open here. All right, so here we go. So gospelofdoubt.net, which is Dr. Zach's newest project with his 9 other writers. Doubtingthomases.net, where he debates the religion with a theist and atheist perspectives. Foundation Beyond Belief, which is a secular charity organization. That's foundationbeyondbelief.org. I'm not even going to pronounce it because I keep getting it wrong. It's apologia-podcast.com. You can find Dr. Zach on Facebook at Facebook.com/Moore, MOOREZW. You can Twitter him at @DrZach. And you can find him on YouTube at youtube.com/MooreZW. Dr. Zach, thanks for coming on and giving us your time. We really, really appreciate it. You've been a great guest.
Thanks so much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
And I am going to run the closer. So let me get rid of that. Let me pull up this. Let me pull up that. Okay, everybody. that's it for this show.
All right.
Here we go. Oops. Me. Okay, you've just enjoyed the MythWits. A special thanks goes out to our guest tonight, Dr. Zachary Moore. Join us for a live broadcast next week and every week, Mondays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We have a chat room where you can ask questions during the show, but if you missed the live show, you can always catch the encore presentation at our website and the podcast on iTunes. Make sure to check out our channels. We talk to scientists, authors, game designers, artists, and more. You can find all of our goodness at our website, MythWits.com. And of course, visit us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and iTunes. Do the like, follow, subscribe thing wherever it's appropriate. And please give us a review on iTunes. MythWits is a Studio187.com production and is protected under a Creative Commons license. You can download and share it with whoever you like. Don't change it and don't try to make money with it. Make sure to check out Studio187.com for more cool stuff. And we will see you all next week.